Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Black Tub Bootlegs. Today's review, Combo. This bootleg He-Man line steals from the best recognizable content of its time. Blockbuster film characters like Schwarzenegger's Conan and the Terminator, Stallone's Rambo and Rocky, 80's fantasy, action, and sci-fi, Mattel's Masters of the Universe and its competitors all sourced, all cherry-picked to produce this potent knockoff product. By literally slashing likenesses and names into strange bastardizations, China was able to deflect legal blowback while simultaneously distilling the most iconic elements of various properties into this unified rehash that baited consumers with its interesting appearance, and achieved placement as a unique product next to its legitimate competitors at retail stores. By slightly trimming down REMCO bodies and altering Mattel's arms, they paired the best components from each manufacturer, creating a strong muscular base to support both fantasy and wrestler products. Like the original manufacturer, diversity was produced with head swaps, unique head sculpts, and slight color shifts. And like most bootleg products, there are numerous variations and reincarnations. Get comfortable, find some caffeine, and prepare for one of our longest episodes, Combo, a Masters of the Universe knockoff. Our first Combo figure named Combo, after whom the line is named, is patterned after Rambo. This head is the only one with a potential connection to Mattel's original work, a modified He-Man head. While most Combo figures are usually seen with bare legs and boots, Combo is one of two figures designed wearing pants. Instead of producing armor, this line sports heat-sealed vinyl vests and comes with flexible silver accessories, which are complex new sculpts. Our second version of Combo is a more common example. This doesn't appear to be a first-run figure, but this is a nice second or third generation example. I'm doing a lot of assuming here, looking at mold quality, with the best molds and materials seeming to be from a wrestler release with made in China markings on the lower back. This example of Combo is a third or fourth generation copy. The torso was compressed to save plastic, but it's hard to see this change when hidden underneath the vest. If you collect these toys, you know that the torsos are very heavy solid plastic, which requires a lot of material, so it's understandable that they would try to crush the torso. Our fourth example is the Sunman Waist or 2-pack variety, which is a rework of the first-gen Combo figure with pants. I'm not sure why the body was changed, but the arms and legs were swapped with Defender of Planets parts. Nearly every inch of the figure was redone, but the end result downgraded the figure's surface quality and balance. This next Combo incarnation is sun gold based with heavily bent knees. Note how much the hands have been dialed back, basically becoming useless flippers, and check out those sagging tricep implants, really bizarre distribution of material. These guys come with flexible accessories and offer some interesting flesh tone variations. Our next example is a Combo Hero. Like the previous figure, these have sun gold inspired bodies. This Combo Hero release no longer has character names on the card back and has opted for a strange numbering system. Again, every aspect of the figure has been excessively resculpted with strange overly clean anatomy across the board. And last but not least, we have this blow molded figure with clearly Stallone inspired vinyl head. The body forms are lifted from the Combo line, looking slightly puffier. These were released as wrestlers in Spain with many different head types. You can see the hip seam is actually splitting open. These guys are very thin and delicate. Next up we have an Eagle Man or E-Man based on Aztec and other native designs. This is one of my favorite sculpts in the series. While there are no clear good and bad guys and weapons are packed at random, it's fairly clear that he's a good guy. I love the complex winged helmet, obscured eyes, and bright colors. There's a rainbow version of E-Man as well, showcased on the card fronts, straddling a dubious miniature gray skull. If you look closely, he's shooting a beam of light out of his middle finger. As mentioned before, these figures were also released as wrestlers. The wrestler versions came with almost no accessories at all, only a belt with winged skull or eagle motif. There are many belt variations out there, which we'll try to cover briefly in a minute. I wish I could say definitively that certain bracer and boot colors would help ID wrestlers versus Combo figures, but I can't. This third example of E-Man is made of a much whiter, flexible material. The face mold has been cleaned up a bit, but is slightly washed out. I'm not sure why there's so many Combo material variations. It might be budgetary based on what a buyer wanted customers to pay per unit, or simply lack of quality control. Yet another example of E-Man made of a much harder pale material. Note the longer poleaxe, which is a first-gen weapon, able to be found in hard and soft plastic. Most of the vests in the video are reproductions made from varying quality vinyl sheeting. The Sunman 2-pack Combo figures seem to consistently have pale bone-colored head material, which stands out against the darker body plastic. These figures are made of reground or recycled material, or slightly dirty new material with lots of embedded flecks of discoloration. The leg sockets are slightly uneven, which causes the figure to have a permanent lean. The Spanish small leg E-Man, also based on Defender of Planets, has an unfortunately wobbly head mold. Also note the finer head paint is all hand done for this line. While the flesh tone paint is slightly off, the color choices are still nice, fairly consistent with previous runs. And last but not least, we have a combo hero version of E-Man with nicely masked paint job. Notice how much material has been removed from around the hips. It appears that this revision was supposed to help with mobility, but as far as improving actual posing and figure stability, the added range of motion offers little when heavily bent knees are taken into account. Leg construction plagues all bootleg and production versions of Masters of the Universe figures. Sungold and Mattel used pinned or glued rubber straps to lock legs into position. Unfortunately, the rubber belts bleed and lose their elasticity over time. REMCO opted for a stronger rigid plastic ball and socket hanger, which allows for better stability and posability, but the dangling internal hanger and central hip post can fail if stressed. Actual combo construction is quite different. They simply added a sphere post to the top of the thigh, which nests into a hidden interior hip socket. Very stable, but not all that posable. Next we have a Schwarzenegger and Frazetta-inspired Conan character named Gallant. This is my least favorite sculpt in the series because of the tiny face and ambiguous expression. The helmet has a strange dimple on top, which is hard to see here. Also note the strange flame fur pattern around the horns. The nicely trimmed neck hair is also kind of strange to see on a barbarian Viking. The Spanish small leg version of this toy is my favorite one, with better head to helmet ratio. Again, we have quickly painted face details, and the cloth vests are quite rough on these. They become ratty even when mint on card. Some releases use plastic backing to prevent the cloth vest from fraying, but these linings often degrade over time and become sticky. Yet another obscure thread in the combo tapestry, we have an Ebonine Gallant. Ebonine was the manufacturer of High Five Sports Stars and other odd figures. These are actually a lift of Olmec Sunman bodies, but have been slightly reworked. I haven't seen a complete combo head set of these or carded examples, but it seems likely that they exist. And of course our combo hero version of Gallant, but without upgraded head sculpt. For some reason they settled for a fading head mold. Next up, a Lawrence Tureau Mr. T bootleg known as Mr.X. Like the combo Stallone figure in this series, T has been chosen because of the Rocky films and his huge popularity during this time. While I'm a fan of Mr. T, I was slow to make the connection here due to how the mohawk was sculpted and painted over. He has really strange locks on the left and right hand side of his face. Our second version of T is a simple head paint variation with tighter masking. This does have slightly different body molds, but the difference is really negligible. Our third Mr. X was shot in a darker skin tone. While I like both colors, I prefer this one for the contrast between the accessories and paint colors. Note the runny hip and boot paint here. At some point they started dunking the boots and hips into tubs of paint instead of spraying them. It seems really wasteful and makes for thick, bubbly, drippy finishes on some figures. The fourth Mr. X is a material variation in very hard fibrous plastic. I'm not sure if it's completely different material or if it was simply heated and shot incorrectly. This flaw shows up on examples of Unicorna as well. Our fifth Mr. X is a Sunman 2-pack version. This is my favorite as far as coloration goes. The green and orange belt really pops and works well with the darker skin tone. Again, you can see the figure is kind of leaning to the side, and we have that odd rib at the top of the legs for some reason. The Spanish small leg version of Mr. X sports a right shoulder flaw that pops up randomly on some figures. This also is our first example of extreme flesh tone mismatch, with the head color not quite matching the body, but the gold belt and various browns still work pretty well together. The combo hero version of Mr. X is similar to the combo hero version of Rambo. I'm not sure why the heads were resculpted for this series, as it's not much of an improvement. Again, we have the skin mismatch due to the off paint color. Note the completely repainted card missing the blue frame around the figure, and faded sword flare. And our last Mr. X is our first example of flame figures. This is obviously the worst skin tone mismatch, and the body is devoid of paint, which seems to be a good identifier for this line. Even though the combo card artwork has changed, the card silhouette has remained untouched for some reason. The figure comes with complete gorilla arsenal, finally completing the line's nod to Rambo. First-gen accessories were soft axes only and quickly branched out into larger rigid polearms, swords, and military weapons. There are forked swords and Frazetta-style executioner axes as well. First-gen stickered shields are usually fibrous flexible plastic with studded round and crown patterns. The shield backs are fairly clean and have fine vertical grooves. Sticker details vary slightly, becoming darker and blunter with every generation. In later releases, shield stickers were completely abandoned, and Galaxy Warrior shields were etched with crude eagle insignia instead. The wrestling versions of these toys came with flexible belts. Each belt had a handful of variations. The skull belt has a noseless variation. and also belt notch variations. The paint applications also vary from generation to generation, with light sprays of gold, wiped on, tinting, and then no paint at all. Next in the lineup is Hulka, loosely inspired by Flash Gordon's Vultan, Hawkman, Colonel Sanders, King Friday, or Thundercat's Jaga. This first example is from Italy, made from a very clean flexible material. The paint is lightly applied but nicely masked, and like Golden Age Hawkman, the head sculpt has deep inset eyes which are fairly unappealing, but he feels right at home in the combo universe. Our second variation is made of more rigid plastic with cooler colors. There's a production flaw on the left bicep which we'll see repeated on other figures shot in the same hard plastic. Accessory material also varies from release to release, with earlier figures having sharper, higher quality weapons. Our third Hulka example is very rigid with clean paint applications, probably second gen. The beard paint mask also consistently clips his odd fangs for some reason, and the brow paint varies from warm to nearly black in color. Our fourth example is more flexible rubber, with fangs accidentally painted over. Our fifth example is a Sunman 2-pack figure with a slightly reworked head. As mentioned earlier, nearly every inch of this figure was resculpted, one of the stranger changes being altering the hands to have this clumsy skeletal appearance. The new leg molds also have rough parting lines and a strange rib running across the top of the thigh. The tiny leg version of this toy is my favorite, with bronze skin and discount nutcracker quality feel to the paint job. The additional blue hip plays well off of the wacky skin tone. Moving on, we have Leopard filling the role of Mossman and Beastman with one of the freakier head sculpts in the series. While named Leopard, this figure oddly appears mostly in green plastic devoid of obvious features that scream leopard. He looks like a Chinese imperial lion on the card artwork, with a blunt pudgy nose similar to Falcor. Note the nice original vest here, stitched in soft vinyl. Our second version is slightly greener, but nothing wildly different. The head sculpt has remained the same, this is just a different shot with slightly different paint. The Sunman 2-pack version has nice colors yet again with red versus green. The only subtle difference is that the ears are slightly pointier and the neck connection was obviously reworked to work with the different Sunman bodies. There are flesh tone versions of this figure, but my favorite variation is this bright red leopard with black and green paint. He looks like he popped straight off the pages of a Hellboy comic. The combo hero release commits to a slightly more saturated green and eye-popping fluorescent orange. The head sculpt is virtually unchanged on this thing. Again, we have slightly pointier ears, but no huge difference from the initial release. Our next figure, the Evil, is yet another really strange original sculpt, potentially based on a televised Beauty and the Beast series featuring Ron Perlman. The timing for this inspiration might be off by a year or so, but the appliances have a similar frowny cat look. This figure is best described by Ashens as Cat Prince Adam, about to puke, but holding it in. Our second example comes in rigid green, similar to the Leopard figure shown previously, possibly meant to mimic Street Fighter II's Blanka character. This figure would be post-1992 if that's the case, but I believe this line is much earlier, with the first combo releasing circa 1986. Our third Evil is another flesh tone example in rigid plastic, a subtle hair color variant. The packaging for first-gen figures is borderless and later has a white outline added and sword lens flare increased for some reason. And as mentioned before, the combo hero card was completely repainted and looks much worse than the original. The fourth example of this figure has shocking yellow hair and a pasty mismatched face. This is made from rigid plastic and sports the same bicep flaw as the second example of Hulka. The Sunman hip version sports Blanka colors yet again, and by now you've picked up on my preference for the extra belt paint. It's just a shame that the articulation and leg molds are so rough on these guys. This oddball flame combo figure is made of regrind similar to the Sunman 2-pack figures. The boots and pant legs used throughout all combo releases were actually lifted from 1985 REMCO wrestling referees. Grooves were added to the pant legs to tie them into the ribbed Sunman style hip. Our 7th Evil is another nice small leg version with muted colors. The mismatched face paint is way off, but similar to Mr. X, it still works out, kind of. Again, the added belt paint gives this figure a bit more punch. Our last squat version of Evil is fairly standard with no shocking new features. Again, we have the carved away hips, weird arms, and ugly all around everything. One of my favorite characters in the series is Robo. This is the second Schwarzenegger-inspired combo, coming to us this time as the Terminator. Like the first combo Rambo figure, Robo is the only other character depicted wearing pants, and similar to the Rambo figure, this toy was also released with and without pants. While we usually expect to see the Terminator wielding guns, he looks pretty comfortable holding fantasy weapons as well. The head sculpt is much better than the Schwarzenegger Gallant figure, a nicely constructed face with very deeply inset exposed electronic eye and temple. The exposed Terminator skull can be found painted in silver and gray. The hair is also consistently painted this brown color with reddish undertones around the edge. Again, we encounter all types of plastic quality here and color variations. This third figure is actually straight off of being mint on the card. The Sunman 2-pack version of this figure has a very off-colored head once again, rigid as usual, lighter in color than the main body. The head mold is still very clean despite the rough body execution. The Spain short-leg version wins again, looking like Han Solo Papa Smurf. The original vest for this figure is often light pink. The head sculpt is a little degenerated but not terrible. Our squat combo example has a very light hair paint application, no real detail differences here, fairly consistent head execution across the board on these guys. The biggest variation is our combo hero resculpt, which like its siblings brings no real improvement to the line, just slick differences. We have very even paint applications here which are kind of nice, but the figure doesn't look as nice as the original sculpture. An articulation run shows us a few interesting things, but these toys are all pretty basic. The standard combo figures are all solid vinyl construction with ball and socket pop joints. The weakest joints are unfortunately the most heavily used joints, the body-arm connections and leg connections. These small pill-like posts are very prone to ripping if the limbs are pulled. Leg mobility for all versions of this line are unimpressive and cause more lack of stability than anything else. While the Sunman 2-pack figures are solidly constructed, they're top of the heap for worst leg position, with both legs, feet, and knees aligned to a single vertical plane offering no stability. The Spain small leg version of the figures are fairly stable, but run a close second for worst articulation. The torso doesn't pivot at the waistline due to stair-stepping at the parting lines on the torso. The rigid leg hanger doesn't offer any real posability. The combo hero figure is very reliable though, but again the leg articulation is mainly decorative for ease of construction and offers little in the way of posability or basic support. Our next character, Unicorna, is very popular and was a great choice based on people's infatuation with unicorns during the 80s. The amazing head sculpt is so overly simple and effective, it's like something straight off of a terrible medieval tapestry. Odd exposed white teeth, human eyes, mane, really pop against the dark body color. Again, we have a nice original stitched vest. Our second variation of Unicorna is not that much different, but it's probably a second gen with thick dunked boot paint. It's interesting that they chose such dark colors for this usually light-colored creature. As mentioned earlier, there are odd lighter flesh tone versions of nearly every combo animal figure, but these fleshy variations are really hard to come by. Again, the Defender of Planets version from Spain is on top with its color choices, blasting us with black, white, yellow, and red, and there's yet another subcategory of this Unicorna as a wrestler with blow-molded torso and rubbery limbs. Looking more closely at min-on card examples from Spain, this specific combo run has more to offer than what the card backs depicted. While honoring the original character roster with Robo and their other original designs, the manufacturers went even farther and dipped their hands into slightly older material to make more character variations. This obscure ape combo is a nice addition, and looks familiar because it was taken from Mego's Planet of the Apes Cornelius figure. A pretty bold move, right? But think about when these combo toys were made. It was the mid-80s to early 90s, a 20-year buffer from when Mego Toys first sold this in 1967, making it a relatively safe property to shamelessly rip off. And this lion figure lifted from Mego's 1974 Cowardly Lion Oz product. While seemingly ridiculous to toss these likenesses on He-Man style fantasy figures, these are arguably some of the greatest bootleg heads to join the combo line, and Masters of the Universe bootlegs in general. These same figures, mostly found overseas, would get new life in the mid-90s when reissued by the US startup company E-Toys of New York. E-Toys ended up going bankrupt and exchanging hands several times, but temporarily revived the combo line and other bootleg lines. There are always new domestic and foreign combo reissues surfacing, which keeps things interesting. Our last figure, Satana, is a mashup of D&D's War Duke and Skeletor. This is the most complex mold in the series, which splices the two characters together. A dragon-winged helmet rests on a half-living and half-dead face. Like the Gallant Schwarzenegger sculpt, the living side is pretty weakly sculpted, but the other motifs are so great that they distract from the partially realized work. The tapering scaled dragon spine and thin tongue are nice touches. This example happens to be shot with black paint, which works well for this character. Our second example is a third-generation combo with compressed torso depth, similar to the combo example that we saw earlier. The figure may have been partially hand-painted, but it looks like it was simply overshot with paint and it bled behind the stencils. He comes with a clean example of a soft vinyl vest. Our third variation is my favorite version with a fully painted skull nose and blacked out teeth, reground plastic and a unique waistline made of solid green plastic instead of being painted green. I haven't been able to find another example quite like this one. The Sunman 2-pack example has its signature lighter head plastic and also includes the painted skull nose within the face stencil. This is the cleanest paint that I've seen, with really nice crisp details. Our squat version looks to have been repainted by the manufacturer to cover a black overspray from painting the skull side of the head. Flesh tone painting is really common in later combo examples to mask plastic color differences and also texture issues. Our last combo hero, Satana, has pink helmet paint. We have overly clean, round anatomy, narrower torso, and loose basic articulation. The combo hero leg construction is the weakest overall, often breaking or gouging itself when paired with a hollow hip. Satana is such a great design, it's a shame that more figures within the line didn't utilize this two-face gimmick, bringing more meaning to the combo name. With so many reissues and rehashes, this is one of those lines like Galaxy Warriors that'll keep on giving for years to come. Thanks everybody for watching, and as always, stay tuned for more Blacktub Bootlegs.